our public health team has this massive database called Transpace, and they had cleaned every single collision data, which very rare, right? Because I'm presuming nationally police departments track things on paper. So they had digitalized it, and then so provided this massive data set of the collisions, and then they also had created a land use data set. So they'd taken any data that they had available about the land use there, so including like, is this nearest, are there schools, so we could measure how far we were from a school or senior centers, or even information about the intersection, like is it signalized, is it not signalized, does it have a stop control measure. So all that information was in one data set, which was massive. I believe our Fair Pairs team, we handed them a fire hose of information, and they had to look at it thoughtfully, and we gave them about 2 weeks to do all their thoughtful thinking. How did the implementation of this scenario, using all this data, meet my goal of reducing pedestrian fatalities by 50%? Or, and that was using the collision modification factors and sort of a high, medium, low, like high, so we'll reduce this collision by X%. Because by taking multiple approaches, we'd have different outcomes. And so that was what was really valuable, is not just spatially like, these would be the intersections you fix, but also tying it to a metric that said, and here's how this one has met your goal or didn't meet your goal. And it helped us to sort of, that we really wanted to compare apples to apples, and that wasn't intuitive how that would be played out.
Right.
And that's where a visual representation of these scenarios was so important. No, it needed to be mapped, so that was really important. It needed to be, the question is, does this meet this goal? Who does this impact, right? Like, if so, there was other goals within our pedestrian strategy. So the main portion of the PED strategy was to reduce our collisions by, our injuries and fatalities by 50%. And all of those metrics were really clearly laid out. And so because we'd set performance goals, and because we were looking at scenarios, it was, what had not occurred to me, and I think was really excellent, was that we were able to match both our goals and our approach on the same page. So at the end of the day, those, the scenario plan is not quite as important, but that map is like our guideline and our world. Like, this is where we're going. And so when people actually ask for our available pedestrian safety money to improve a curb, we say, if it's not one of those dots on the map, no way. And we handed those out, and she just felt immediately confident that we were done. So instead of having check-ins with her for months and convincing her for months that we were going the right way, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, it took 5 minutes for her to say, clearly you've been thinking about this, it meets our goals, you've had to make choices among different scenarios, you've even put a price tag on it, I know how much this is going to cost me when you ask for money. Awesome. It ended the conversation about what we're doing for pedestrian safety. So when I say this is a WalkFirst project, I don't have to have another conversation with my funders, with my bosses, because we showed a transparent and clear approach, and those visualizations help, because otherwise, if we talked about it, it would have come in a memo. It has been the bedrock of our work and how we communicate to all of our stakeholders about why we are doing what we are doing from here on out. And just completing it in like a 1-second conversation instead of days of testimony is ideal.
Absolutely.
I don't know how to write how you can think about approaching your contract so that they're because I believe this took a good chunk of our budget, worth every penny, but it meant that we had less for other things. Totally fine, but if I had an approach up front that had costed it, because I don't think it had, that said, we don't know what the visual will look like, right? Because it took that was close to like 3 months into the process that these emerged, and it's a less anticipated need, but I wonder if there's a way of considering how to build it in so that people know they'll get something of this caliber and of this quality, and it will replace a memo. My fiscal prudence side is like, don't want the fancy thing, just want the brick and mortar.
I hear you.
And then of course, the fancy thing really just changed our communication. It just like it was the like sort of diamond on the ring, like just made it so it was just hooray, we're done, we figured it out. The best use of it was to help decision makers make decisions. And that is, I mean, I'm sure the bread and butter of Founder Peers work where you're always, the public sector, I might like something, but I don't choose very much about what gets paid for, what doesn't get done. I don't make priorities, agency or city priorities. So I need tools to communicate to my agency, my city, why this is the way to spend your money. And, or why this is, if not spending your money, like this is the solution to some of your problem. And that was the most important thing that I had not recognized would be so important. And I think that because I didn't realize the sort of recognition it would get while we were in the process, but also just that there was a quick way of getting consensus. Yeah. We quickly got to consensus. I mean, I've never seen a project get like, my boss was the controller, and he's like, I've never seen a capital planning process start and get fully funded within a year. And I was like, oh, it's never occurred to me.